Hey, Sean here from SpeedCubeReview.com. So I have a video on how to lube a Speed Cube, as well as one on how to tension a Speed Cube. I still will often get questions on how I set up a cube. I'm going to show you that today. Now it really does depend on what the cube is, and especially if it's a larger cube than a 3x3. Today I'm going to set up a MoYu AoLong Mini. Now really all I have done to this already is taken it out of the box, put my sticker on it, tightened the tensions a little bit, and done a few hundred solves. I honestly will say this is perfectly set up for me right now. I actually have not gotten a single corner twist while solving, even though it is much easier to do it on this first version mold of the AoLong compared to most other cubes. With cubes in the past, you'd possibly have to do some sanding of pieces and adjusting of other things, but cubes nowadays can be perfect right out of the box. And remember, cubes do not need lube, but they do change some things on how the cube feels. Let's go to an extreme though, and really make this cube perfect. Now before I go any further, I want to thank SpeedCubeShop.com. They're the ones who got me this cube. So you can stop by the store with the link in the description and use discount code CubeReview to save 10% on your order. First thing I'm going to do is make sure the different parts of the pieces stay together. Every 100 solves or so, a piece will separate from my fingernail catching on it or just an odd turn of the cube. Many cubes like the Gans 356 do not have this issue because it has caps instead of 3 separate pieces and it's held together really well and not just different plastic pieces fitting together. I'm going to take the pieces apart and use some super glue to where the pieces meet. I like using the glue with the brush because it's much more controllable on where the glue goes and much less wasteful. Now this can be risky because if you do not push the pieces all the way back together or just put the corners together incorrectly, it can be next to impossible to pull them back apart without just breaking the plastic. This is something that I've only done to a couple other cubes, being the Thunderclap and AoLong, and really of all the things today is completely the least necessary part of it. After that is complete, we want to lube the springs and the core. Now for this, there are different lubes to choose from. Maru, Silicone Shock Fluid, which I have 2550 and now 1000 from Factory Team, or a lube you can buy from shops like Speed Cube Shop, which is a similar solution. For this, the point of the lube is to prevent the springs from catching on the plastic inside the centerpiece, and since it does not affect the speed or feeling much at all, we want some really thick lube since it will last much longer. You can see how thick the lube is for the weight 2550 and 1000 by how slow the bubbles move. The weight 6 from Speed Cube Shop though is ridiculously thick. This is what I'm going to use. What we want to do is put just a small amount on both ends of the spring. I used to put some on the bottom of the centerpiece, but this really doesn't do much since it doesn't actually touch the core. Once that is taken care of, we want to tension the screws evenly. You do not need to know the exact tensions you want, but instead just make sure they are even. Often I'll count how many threads are showing when I pull the centers away from the core. If I cannot see any threads, I'll just eyeball the distance. Once that is all set, we can put the pieces back on. About halfway put together, I'll add some lube to the pieces. Now this is very much a personal preference and depends on what cube it is. Cubes like the Meiying and Yushao are quite fast out of the box and need a good amount of thick or heavy lube to make them more controllable. Some cubes like the Tanglong feel really nice with thinner lube because it's already quite controllable, but works well with a smooth feel. I personally like the AoLong with no lube on the pieces, but for the sake of this video, I'll add a small amount of thin lube. I want to be using weight 25 Silicon Lube. Something like Maru lube is much thinner but dries out really fast and only really used for larger cubes for me, since larger cubes can have close to if not over 100 moving pieces. Now that that part is all set, the last thing to do is to tension how you like them. Right now this is a bit too loose, so I'm going to tighten every side the same amount. I found that as you use a cube, it seems to get a little bit looser, and much of that might have to do with the springs breaking in. I honestly do not think you need to break in a cube with solves before you set it up, because much of the breaking in has to do with springs getting used and not plastic breaking down like older cubes with flashing from the mold. Feel free to set up your cube right out of the box. But I would also caution to try a cube out first and remember that there's no official way to set up a cube. Some cubes I use a ton of heavy lube like the Thunderclap, and some I use none. All of them usually need some on the springs, and although this cube did not have really any spring noise out of the box, it does not hurt to add some of your own. Unfortunately, I cannot tell you the best way to lube or tension your cube. I find many beginning cubers think looser and faster cubes will mean faster solves, but often it is the opposite. So thank you for watching. Let me know what you do and prefer when you set up a cube. Hit like and subscribe for more content like this in the future, and as always stop by SpeedCubeReview.com for more news and reviews.